Yeah. Okay. So we don't need you again. Okay. So those online, let me take it again. We were discussing about the flow of incomes. So in this particular case, we are looking at individuals and we are also looking at what? Firms. So we started by saying that individuals provide services to firms, and firms also do what? They pay for that particular service that individuals are supplying. And by paying for that particular service, individuals earn some income.
Hello, we are still having the same challenge. We cannot hear.
Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear now.
We can hear. We can hear.
Daddy can hear now.
Mhm.
But they could hear me. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Should I
you. Yes.
continue?
Yes, we can hear you.
So should I continue?
I guess
Yes,
we
yes.
didn't hear from the start. We didn't hear anything
But can
at
you hear
all.
me? I just want to get that
Yes,
assurance.
we can hear you now. Yes,
Okay,
we
so
can hear
thank
you.
you. Okay. Okay, so we are going to start all over again. Okay. So here we are looking at the flow of incomes. So largely we're talking about individuals here, and we're also looking at what? Firms. And we said individuals provide services. Is that not it? They get employed and they provide services to firms. So they provide services to firms. They provide services to firms. Not for free. The firms would have to do what? To pay for that particular service. So firms would have to pay for that particular service. And by paying for that particular service, individuals earn income. Is that not it? And they provide a service for firms, and then the firms will produce what? Goods. Is that not it? So firms will produce goods for which people? For the individuals. Firms will produce goods for the individuals. And individuals will use the income that they got from the services rendered to do what? To buy from the firms. So they also, need to incur some form of what? Expenditure. So when you look at it, we have the income side and we also have the what? The expenditure side. For this to be complete, we are talking about the incomes, and then the expenditure should be, the computation should be what? The same, assuming there is no leakage. So which means if there are no leakages in the flow, which means there are no savings, okay, there is nothing like idle income. How much that you have earned is used to expend or to pay for that particular good. So which means that whatever amount that you earned here on this particular side from the income should be the same as this particular side. If there is a leakage, then that is where these guys will come in. We call them the financial what? The financial institutions. The financial institutions or the banks, they will come in. Either banks, individuals will do what? Will save some with the what? With the banks. Okay. Now the bottom line is, along these particular lines, we are looking at what? Firms are single units, individuals are single units. When you pick the entire units together, we look at the macro side. So by the macro side, we are looking at factors that will not only affect individuals, okay, Factors that will not only affect financial institutions, factors that will not also only affect what firms, but we are looking at factors that will affect all the entire, unit. So we are looking at what macro. So for instance, if you have inflation cuts across all the units. Okay, if you are talking about interest rates, it cuts across. Okay, if we are also talking about subsidies or taxes or wages, government increments or whatever, it cuts across the entire thing. Are we together? Okay. Now, today, what we are coming to do, we are coming to look at what is called the national income accounting. 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 With the national income accounting, our focus will be on what is called the gross domestic product. Our focus will be on the gross domestic product, what is also called the GDP. Our focus will be on the gross domestic product. What is also called the GDP. What is also called the GDP. Okay, so for the GDP, we are looking at, remember I said at the macro side, we are looking at the entire, economy. So if you pick all the individuals, households, firms, financial institutions, if you put everything together, that's where we are talking about what? The macro. Remember, firms produce, is that not it? And then the individuals also offer services. This particular people, financial institutions, they also offer what? Services. Are we together? We are looking at all the production process, okay? All the production process going on in this entire economy, irrespective of who is producing it, irrespective of what, whether it's coming from the individual, whether it's coming from financial institutions, whether it's coming from what, from the firms. So we are looking at the production of what, goods and then what, services within an economy. So in this particular case, if firms offer services, financial institutions offer service. If firms produce, financial institutions offer services, individuals offer services. In this particular case, as a single unit, the focus is on the market value of the goods produced by what? The firms, the services produced by the firms, financial institutions, as well as the services from the individuals. So in this particular case, our gross domestic product is looking at what is called the market what? Value of all goods and what? Services produced. Of all goods and services produced within within an economy or within the country. Within the country. So in this case, the focus is on the what? The market value of all goods and services. So which means all firms' production, all services that have been rendered by everyone in the system, including individuals and households, when we sum everything together, we will get what is called the what? The gross domestic what? Product. Now let's look at this. And the gross domestic product is also called the what? The GDP. So anytime we are talking about the GDP, we are just looking at what? How much has been produced by the what? By the country. So if this is the map of Ghana, okay, if this is the map of Ghana, how much we are able to do what? To produce as a country. How much we are able to produce as a country is called the what? The gross domestic what? product. In this case, how much is produced irrespective of what the one producing it. Now, we are looking at the market value of all the production. The key thing is, as we are looking at the market value of the production, the goods and services, another focus is on who produces it. Who produces it? Because in Ghana, we have citizens. Is that not it? We have citizens and we have foreigners. We have citizens and we have foreigners. Citizens can be individuals, okay? We also have financial institutions owned by citizens. We also have what? Firms owned by citizens. We also have foreigners as individuals, financial institutions owned by foreigners, and also, of course, firms owned by what? Foreigners. For GDP, our focus is on the market value of all the goods and services produced within the country, irrespective of what? Of who produces it. So for GDP, we don't care whether it's a Chinese who is doing that production. We don't care if it is an American firm. We don't care if it is a Vietnamese firm. So far as that particular good or a service is rendered within the four corners of the country, it is counted as what? As part of Ghana's what? GDP. Are we together? It is counted as Ghana's GDP. So here the focus is on all the market value of all goods and services produced within the country, irrespective of what? Who produces it. So I know in this class, we have people coming from Kanfale, Agric, Sabo Njida, Chagu, and the rest. The fact that we are here producing together, it is the GDP of what? Of this particular class, irrespective of where we are coming from. Are we together? Okay. So now, how do we measure our GDP? How do we measure our GDP? So let's look at the measurement of GDP. How do we measure the GDP?
The audio is gone again. We can't hear.
Oh. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear. We can
Hello,
hear.
can you hear?
We can hear.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Someone should unmute and answer. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear.
Okay, thank you. So how do we compute GDP? How do we compute GDP? How do we calculate GDP? We have three methods, and we are just going to look at one and proceed. We have three methods of computing the GDP. And theoretically, each method is supposed to give the same answer. Now, we have first, we have the income what? Approach. We have the income approach as a measure of what? Computing GDP. We have the income approach as a measure of computing GDP. And with the income approach, the focus is on summing or adding all incomes. Adding all what? Incomes together. Adding all incomes of the units, individual units together. So like the flow that we did, the incomes firm will earn, the incomes individuals will earn, the incomes financial institutions will earn, and everything. When you sum all the incomes and then get a particular value, that particular value will be equal to the what? The GDP. We also have another value, another approach, which is called the what? The output approach, which is the output approach, For the output approach, the focus is on the value addition. The focus is on the value addition of of the value addition. So let me just write it in full. Value addition in the production process. The value addition in the production process. With the output approach, we are focusing on how much value has been added along the production chain or along the production process. So in this particular case, if individual A or firm A is starting to produce a particular good, is that not it? And how much the person is using, this is the beginning of the production process, okay? So maybe he has incurred 500 cedis to produce this particular good. And that particular good will also be taken by who? Another person to produce another good. Is that not it? So which means that the input of B will be the output of who? Of A. So B will also produce and then maybe sell it for maybe 650. How much has been added here? Excellent.
150.
How much has been added here? 150. This will also be sent to another producer, C. That producer will produce and say maybe 800 and say maybe let's say 850. How much has been added here? 200.
150 plus.
So up to the
200,
final
350.
producer, and maybe up to the final producer, it is maybe 1,500. Up to the final producer, 1,500. So how much from C to D? How much has been added? 600 and what? 650. So the GDP is basically from the output approach is looking at what? The summation of all the what? The value added. So we are looking at this one plus this one plus this one. How much we get will be the what? The GDP. Remember, it is not taking care of what? What is called the intermediary good. The intermediary good. The intermediary good is your input or goods that is tend to produce the final what? The final good. It is a good, but not the final good. So it is the good that is being used to produce the what? The final good. So when you look at the computation of the GDP, using the value added approach, it does not take care of what? The intermediary good. So it is always being subtracted. Now the focus will be on the third approach, which is the what? The expenditure approach. Where is the DESTA? Which is the expenditure approach. Which is the, okay, let me cancel here. The third one is the expenditure approach. The third one is the expenditure approach. And this is the approach we will spend some time on. So like the name suggests, the expenditure approach, we are looking at what? The summation of all expenditure. The summation of all expenditure, or what? Or spending. Remember that from the flow that we initially did, the flow of income, I said typically all the incomes, these are firms, individuals. Firms will give them what? Income, is that not it? After they have provided that particular service. And they will use that income to do what? To do what? To spend or to expend, yes. So which means typically in the absence of any leakage in the system, the income that you are given should be equal to the expenditure. So the income approach, the figure that you are going to get should be equal to the figure that you will get from the expenditure approach, and of course, even from the what? The output approach. With the expenditure approach, our focus is on the spending side. Our focus is on the spending side. Our focus is on the spending side. So with the spending side, we are talking about how much people actually what spend. And when you sum all the spendings within the economy, it gives you the total value, the market value of goods and services, which we call the what? The gross domestic product or the GDP. So with this one, which spending specifically are we looking at? So let's look at the various units or the spendings here. One, we are looking at the households. We are looking at the households. The households. We are looking at households. Households spend, okay? And what they spend is something that we can call personal consumption. Personal consumption, or just say consumption for short. Just say consumption for short. So within an economy, we have this particular critical unit, households, you and I. So we spend. So our spending is what? The personal consumption. We can call the personal consumption what? C. So we are looking at how much we spend on goods and then what? And services. Once we sum all the households consumption, it gives the what? The total personal consumption of households within the economy. Are we together? Now, there are so many things that actually go on within this particular consumption. There is something that we call the not permanent income hypothesis. I will not talk about that. We have something that is called the fundamental, maybe it will be a bonus question, fundamental psychological law. This law was provided by John Maynard Keynes. You remember this man, eh? Yes. The fundamental psychological law. The fundamental psychological law is basically talking about what? Household consumption. But you know how much we will consume as households. How much we will consume as households, okay? Depends on what? Depends on our income. It also depends on other factors, but basically we will focus on what? On this one. Why here is our what? Our income. So how much an individual will consume depends on what? On your income. So here, once your income increases, what will happen to consumption? Yes, consumption will also what? Consumption will increase. Consumption will also what? Increase. Okay. Now, this fundamental psychological law is saying that yes, how much consumption of individuals will do what? Will increase as income increases. But the increase in income, the increase in consumption will not be proportionate to the what? The increase in what? In income. In other words, if your income increases by 100%, yes, you will increase consumption, but you will increase consumption by what? By 100%. So the law is saying that human beings intrinsically are expected to do what? To increase consumption as income increases, but not as much as the increase in what? In income. In other words, the fundamental psychological law is stating that human beings are by nature expected to do what? To increase consumption as incomes increase. But the increase in what? Consumption will not be as much as the increase in what? In income, which means if your income increases by 1 cedi, you will increase consumption, but you will use all the 1 cedi to do what? To consume, which means there will still be some amount left. And that amount left is called the savings. We'll be looking at that one. So basically, the fundamental psychological law is saying that the incomes that the consumption that you are going to drive as an individual, okay, or a household is supposed to increase if incomes what? Increases. But by how much? In other words, the consumption that you are going to get, the consumption that you are going to, drive depends on what? On your income, which means that if I have income here, and I have something attached to it. This one is the coefficient of what? Of income. It is showing us how much consumption will what? Consumption will increase or will change
if
when
income
income changes or when income increases. Remember, we did something like this from the beginning. This is the coefficient. It tells us how much consumption will change when income does what? When income changes. So the fundamental psychological law is basically telling us what? There is some proportion of income, okay, that is consumed as a result of increases in what? In the income. That propensity to increase consumption as a result of the increases in what? In income is called the marginal propensity to do what? To consume. It's called the marginal propensity. The marginal propensity to consume. It's called the marginal propensity to consume. It's called the marginal propensity to consume. Into brackets MP what? C, MPC. So MPC is the marginal propensity to what? To consume. In this case, if you have something like this, the change in consumption as a result of change in what? In income will give you the what? The A. And this A, this thing is called the marginal what? Propensity to what? To consume. It is telling us how much you will increase consumption when income increases by just one what? 1 unit. Are we together? Okay. Now, a typical consumption function, like we stated here, depends on what? On income, but it is not entirely the case, okay? We have income, we have some amount of consumption that you can get, whether you have an income or not. In other words, you will have this as consumption, okay, plus how much you are going to spend as a result of what? Income. Maybe will you mind if I change this to B? It doesn't change anything, but I want to maintain some consistency. Okay. So here, how much you will earn, how much you will spend as a result of changes in income is what? Is the B, which is the marginal propensity to do what? To consume. In other words, for a typical consumption function.
Hey, Fatu.
That what? He is talking. Okay. So here, for a typical consumption function, we are looking at how much you will spend or how much you will consume, whether you have income or not, is this one, plus how much you will consume if you have what? If you have income. So when you look at a typical consumption function, we have two things. For a typical consumption function, we have two things. One is this particular portion. And for this particular portion, when your income is 0, when you don't have income, it means this whole side, remember, if Y is 0, here will also be what? 0, which means consumption will only be left with what? A. So that particular A is a consumption that you will incur, whether you have an income or not. And that particular consumption is called the autonomous consumption. It's called the autonomous consumption. It's called the autonomous consumption. For instance, I know when I don't have, whether I have money or not, in the evening we'll get TZ to eat. So that particular TZ is the what? Is the autonomous consumption. Whether you have money or you don't have money, in the evening, actually you will get something to eat. So this particular portion of consumption, that does not depend on income. It's called the autonomous what? Consumption. That part of consumption that is not dependent on income. I hope you are writing. It's called the autonomous what? Consumption. So yes. When you yes, to survive, yes. Autonomous consumption, yes. Mm. 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 But it's not from your pocket. I get it. It's not from your pocket. So, for instance, those days, maybe Ghana school days, when you don't have money, evenings, you will still get food to eat. But once I get some money, I'll go and buy something else to also eat. So at this particular stage, we are only looking at what? The autonomous consumption. And then the second part, which is the what? The BY. This particular part is the consumption that you are going to get as a result of what? Income, changes in income. Or it is that part of consumption that depends on what? Income. So this one is called the induced consumption, induced consumption, or some people say induced component, induced consumption, induced consumption, induced consumption. So the induced consumption is that part of consumption that depends on what? On income. So which means that assuming the autonomous consumption is 5, assuming autonomous consumption is 5, assuming autonomous consumption is what? Is 5. Are we together? And income is 10, which means our consumption function here will be what? 5 plus B. Are you getting it? B 10. So here it will be what? It will be 10B. It will be 10B. Are we together? It will be 10B. Where B here is the marginal propensity to do what? To consume. Where B is the marginal propensity to consume. So for instance, the marginal propensity to consume, as we see here, the marginal propensity to consume, as we see here, is always less than what? Always less than 1, which means it's a fraction. Because you can't spend more than how much you have. Are you getting it? You can't spend more than how much you have. So the marginal propensity to consume is always less than what? Less than 1. So which means that in this particular case, if I say autonomous consumption is 5, okay, B, which is the what? Which is the marginal propensity to consume, maybe 0.75. And I tell you to construct the consumption function. The consumption function is what? C is equal to A plus what? BY. In this case, it will be C is equal to what? 5 plus what? B, 5 plus 0.75 Y. So I can ask you, what is the consumption function if income, okay, is 10? So in this case, it means if Y is 10, I getting it. So for instance, if Y is 10, what will be the consumption function? It will be C is equal to 5 plus what? 0.75 times what? 10. In this case, we will get what? We will get what? Excellent. So like 5 plus 7.5. We are going to get 12.5 as the what? As the total consumption. Look at something. If someone doesn't have any income, which means Y is equal to what? 0. In this case, here will be what? 0. So the entire induced component will be what? 0. So how much the person will be consuming given income is equal to 0 will be what? 5. And those with some income, you will earn how much? 12.5. That is if your income is what? If your income is 10. Are we together? If your income is 10. Any question? In this case, here, this is the consumption function. Are we together? Please note, always the consumption function is C is equal to A, which is autonomous what? Consumption, plus B, which is the marginal propensity to consume, plus what? Plus income. In some instances, they will say this one, YD. YD is called the disposable what? Disposable income. The disposable income is how much you have earned minus what? The taxes. It's called the disposable income. So why? Which means that even the income that you are making here is not the final income, because maybe government would have stepped in to charge or to impose some taxes. So how much is left will now be used to do what? To consume. And how much is left is called the disposable income. So please note that the disposable income is the income minus what? Minus taxes. The income minus taxes. So the income minus what? Taxes. Okay. So maybe if I use Y or YD, it doesn't mean anything, but know that YD is the disposable income. That is after taking care of what? Taxes. Okay. So I can tell you to calculate the consumption function if the autonomous consumption is 5. Marginal propensity to consume is 0.5. With this one, I can tell you to specify the consumption what? Function. So with this one, the consumption function is this one. So C will be what? A, which is what? 5 plus B, 0.75, Y or YD. So you just put this one. So maybe the sub question will be A, calculate consumption, okay? If income is 0, II, if income is 10, if income is 10. So in this particular case, now income is what? 0, and you have already specified your consumption function. So in this case, our consumption function will be what? 5 plus 0.75 Y, and Y is what? 0, which means our consumption will be what? 5. The second one is consumption if Y is what? 10, which means the person is now having income. The person is now having income. The person is now having income. So let's look at something. If you now have income, your consumption will be what? 5 plus, So this will give you 5 plus 7.5, which will be equal to what? 12.5. Are we together? Which will be equal to 12.5. Now, what have you observed? What have you observed? This is maybe say the former consumption when you didn't have income. Is that not it? And this is now consumption when you got some what? Some income. When you got some income. With this particular one, there is going to be there is a change in what? In consumption. Is that not it? There is a change in consumption. And that change in consumption is what? The C1, that is the consumption as a result of what? The income minus what? C0. In this case, it is 12.5 minus what? Minus, good. What are you getting? 7.5. Good. Now look at something. This is the change in consumption, which is 7.5. The change in income is what? Is what? 10. Because the first income was what? 0. And then the new income, 10. So the change in income is what? 10. Your income has increased by what? 10. How much are you increasing consumption? 7.5. Which means there is some amount that the person is what? Is keeping. And that amount that the person is keeping is called what? Savings. It's called savings. Which means that savings will be equal to what? Your income minus what? Your what? Minus consumption or the expenditure. Minus consumption or expenditure. Minus consumption or expenditure. So similar to this savings, similar to what is the name? The marginal propensity to do what? To consume. We also have what is called the marginal propensity to do what? To save. We also have the marginal propensity to do what? To save, which is NP S, marginal propensity to save, which is the MPS, marginal propensity to save, marginal propensity to save. So marginal propensity to save is also the proclivity of what? Savings to changes in what? In income. How much you are more inclined to save as a result of changes in your what? In your income. So which means that the marginal propensity to what? To save, we can basically be looking at it as the marginal propensity to save, which is also your overall unit minus the marginal propensity to what? To consume, will be the marginal propensity to what? To save, marginal propensity to save. So the marginal propensity to save is this one. So your overall savings function can also be small s, which is the marginal propensity to do what? To save, times your what? Times your income. Times your income. Where the small s is what? Is the marginal propensity to what? To save. So which is the marginal propensity to save, we can also just refer it to as what? Small s. Small s. So marginal propensity to save, please note, marginal propensity to save plus the marginal propensity to do what? To consume should be equal to what? 1. So which means from this particular one, I can ask you what is the marginal propensity to do what? To save. Are we together? What is the marginal propensity to save? Remember, here is the consumption function. Okay, this is the autonomous. This is the marginal propensity to do what? To consume. So which means the marginal propensity to what? To save will be equal to 1 minus marginal propensity to do what? To consume, which is 1 minus 0.75, which will be equal to 0.25. So marginal propensity to do what? To consume, to save is 0.25. Are we together? The overall savings of that particular individual, the overall save, because this is how much you are more inclined to do what? To save as your income changes. So which means your overall savings as an individual will be the marginal propensity to save that we got here, which is 0.25 times what? Income. And the income here is what? 10. How much will you get? How much will you get? 2.5. So this is the total 2.5 what? Of what? Savings that you are going to make. Are we together? Please note that I just canceled something. I said your overall income, is that not it? Should be equal to how much you have what? Consumed. Plus how much you have what? Saved. Or in other words, your total savings should be equal to how much you have earned minus how much you have what? Consumed. How much has been earned? How much is income? 10. Minus how much was the consumption? 7.5. So how much is the savings? 2.5, which is the same thing as this one. Are we together? Are we together? Okay, so if I give you the consumption function and I ask you to estimate the marginal propensity to save, it is not any big calculation. Just look for marginal propensity to do what? To consume and subtract it from 1. That is all. If I ask you to find the total savings, just multiply it by what? By the income, or just find the consumption and then deduct it from the income. In any case, you are going to get the same what? Answer. Are we together? So please note this. Please note this. Okay. So please, what is the name? The computation of the GDP, we said the first is what? Consumption. You need to know consumption. And that is what we have worked out here. Are we together? So this is the consumption. C. There is also the role for firms. And here we are talking about what? Investments. We are talking about investments. we are talking about investments. There is also the role of government as a unit. There is also the role of government as what? A unit, because government also takes part in what? Consumption expenditure. How much government is paying you is part of government what? Consumption. So our entire wage bill is government what? Consumption. Are we together? Okay. So we also have what? Consumption as a result of government activities. Consumption, which is what? Gene. Can I cancel this ones? Can I cancel? Okay. Let me cancel here. Now, when you look at this first three, things that we are looking at, when you look at this first three that we are looking at, this is Ghana. What is the name? Households are here, is that not it? And they consume. Firms, they do the investments here. Government is also what? Here, is that not it? We are still looking at the production of goods and services within the economy or within the four walls of the country. So with these ones, they are here. Now, we also have what is called here, firms, governments, whatever, they produce some for what? For exports. So we have exports. Because that particular exports that we are doing, we send it to the rest of the world. So here is the what? The rest of the world. I can't mention any country, so I'll just put the rest of the world, any country. So we produce and also do what? Exports. We produce and also what? Exports. That particular exports that we are doing will be part of our what? Of our GDP, because it is produced here and it will take care of the production. We also have what is called the what? The imports that we are making from the rest of the world. This is exports. Imports from the rest of the world to the country. So this is imports. This is imports. Now let's look at this. There is something that we'll introduce. So with this one, the total value of our GDP, okay? The total value of our GDP that we can also call maybe Y. Here is not necessarily our income, okay? But let's just say GDP will be the what? The consumption, entire consumption, plus investments, plus what? Plus government, plus exports. Because exports here, minus what? Minus imports. Why are we subtracting imports? Excellent, because we pay. So we are sending money out of the country. So because we need to pay for that particular import. We need to. Why are we adding exports? Because we bring money. Once you export out, you bring what? Money in. And once you import in, you do what? You send money out. So we have this consumption plus what? Investment plus government expenditure plus export minus what? Import. And note that export minus import is called the what? Net exports. Sounds good. Net exports. It's called the 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 net exports. And this net exports can be negative or it can also be what? Positive. Now, let's look at net exports. Exports minus imports as net exports. Maybe let's just say NX, net exports. So if net exports is greater than 0, what does that mean? It means it's positive. Yes, that's good. It means it's positive. And what does that mean? We are expecting more than we do what? We import, which means our exports here, it means that our exports as a country is more than our what? Our import. It's more than our import. It means that we are exporting more as a country, exporting more than what? Than imports. Which means we are selling more to the outside world than we do what? Than we buy from them. Than we buy from them. As a country, is it good or is bad? It's good. Which means, yes, which means your external balance. This is what they also call the external balance. Which means your external balance is positive. Which means your external balance is what? Positive. Your external balance. External balance. External balance is also called the net what? Export. So if it is this one, it means the external balance is what? Is positive. The external balance is positive. Just a minute. Yeah, Tata. 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 It means the external balance is what? Is positive, which means you are exporting more than you what? You import. You are bringing in more income than you are doing what? You are sending out. Okay. Now, if the external balance is also what? Negative, which means it is less than 0. It means you are doing what? You are importing more than you what? You export. You are importing more than you what? You export. Which means in this particular case, you are importing more than you do what? You export. Which means that you are paying more money outsiders than you are what? Than you are receiving. So which means the more we import, the more we send money out, then the more we export, that's the money coming into the country. In this particular case, our external balance will be what? Will be negative. Good. Our external balance will be negative. And if the external balance is negative, it means the country is importing more than the country is what? Exporting, like Ghana. So when you look at our budget, you will find something like the external balance is always what? It's always negative. It means exports are less than what? Are less than imports. Are less than imports. Any question? Any question? So which means the GDP that we are looking at is nothing but households consumption plus investment plus government plus what? Net what? Export. So here you can also just write net what? Export. And then knowing that net exports is what? Imports minus what? Exports. Up to this particular stage, we are still looking at all the production process happening within Ghana. All the production process happening within Ghana. Because once you are bringing the external side, please note, this side is called the external sector. Please note the external sector. That's the external sector. So once you hear of external sector, you'll be thinking of what? Imports and then what? Exports. And this external sector is linked to the external what? Balance. So on the external sector, we haven't an external what? Balance in the negative. So it means the country is importing more than we are exporting. So throughout this stage, this production of values that we are going to get is what? Is GDP. But please note that Ghana as a country is not in autarky. We have Ghanaians elsewhere. Is that not it? Working elsewhere. And Ghana here, remember from the beginning, I said with the GDP, we are looking at the production process or what has been produced, irrespective of who is producing it within Ghana. Once it is produced in Ghana, whether you are a Chinese or you are what? Let me just a moment here. Yeah, hello. I'm there at class, no call about. Okay. irrespective of who is producing it. Are we together? But that isn't the case because we have foreigners here in Ghana. Is that not it? We also have Ghanaians in the rest of the world. We also have Ghanaians here, and we have foreigners here in Ghana. So you need to balance it out because the foreigners here in Ghana, they earn income and they do what? They send it out or they send it home. And those in Ghana and outside Ghana and our Ghanaians are expected to also do what? To bring the money home. Are we together? These foreigners send the money out, which is the here, foreigners sending out, and then Ghanaians in abroad, they also do what? They also send the money in Ghana. These foreigners, once they produce or whatever, sell or they produce and then send money, that is when you will find our finance minister who saying they are repatriating their profits. Are we together? They will send the money out of the country. Ghanaians elsewhere will also bring the money into the country. So you need to work it out. In this particular case, what you are paying out or what the firms are sending out is called the factor income. Factor income. What Ghanaians are also bringing in is also called the factor what? Income. It's also called the factor income. Are we together? What is sent out by foreigners is the factor what? Income. And what is also sent in by Ghanaians outside Ghana is also called the factor what? Income. Those sending money outside Ghana, okay, to abroad. So it will be factor income to abroad. Or some people just say factor income paid to what? To abroad. Factor income paid to abroad. And Ghanaians outside Ghana bringing money into the country, we say it is factor income from where? From abroad. Good, from abroad. So you note the difference. So Ghanaians outside Ghana working and then bringing in money, that is factor income from abroad. And those who are in Ghana and are foreigners sending money outside, it is factor income paid to abroad or factor income to where? To abroad. So we need to work that particular one out. In this particular case, which one will be a plus and which one will be a minus? Good. So factor income from abroad, is it plus or minus? It's plus. So we have factor income from abroad. Will you mind if I write it this way? Or I will just write factor income. Yes, factor income from abroad. Let me see, FB, factor income from abroad. Are we together? So this is factor income from abroad. And then those that are being paid, outside. So here we are looking at factor income to abroad. So we have factor income to abroad, factor income to abroad. The difference, remember this is plus. So are we subtracting this one or we are adding this one? We are subtracting. So it's this minus this. So this minus this. So factor income from abroad is incomes earned by Ghanaians outside Ghana. And factor income to abroad are incomes earned by foreigners, okay, in Ghana. So when you net it, factor income coming in and then minus factor income going out, it is called the net factor income. Net factor income. It's called the net factor income. So this is net. So net factor income is the difference between how much is being received from abroad minus how much is being paid to abroad. All the monies Chinese are making, they send it out. So you need to deduct it. Now, remember, we are still talking about what? Of our GDP, where we said it is consumption plus what? Consumption plus investment plus what? Government expenditure plus what? Net exports. This is what? This will give you the GDP. This will give you the GDP. But with the introduction of net factor income, with the introduction of net factor income into the equation, it ceases to be what? GDP. It is now talking about only Ghanaians, only nationals. So it is no more gross domestic product. It is now gross what? National product. It is now gross national product. Into brackets G and what? And P, gross national product. So gross national product takes care of what? Net factor what? Factor income, which means that gross national product, which is G and what? P, is equal to the gross domestic what? Product, okay? Plus net what? Factor income. Are we together? Remember this one, plus net factor income, plus net factor income. This one is called the net factor income, which means the gross national product is looking at only and only Ghanaians, or it's looking at only and only nationals. It's looking at only and only nationals. So which means that the GDP that we are looking at is not really a true measure of our performance as Ghanaians, because it takes care of what? Foreigners in the country. So if you want to know the exact performance of what Ghana as Ghanaians, we should be talking about what? The gross national what? Product, which takes care of. No, but remember we are taking it out here. Yes. We have netted out here. We have net out. Remember, this is F, foreigners. We have net everything out here. We have net everything out here. So here is looking at only what? Only nationals. Only nationals. By saying gross domestic product, yes, it's talking about how much the country is performing. How much the country is what? Performing, which means that the higher the GDP, the better the country is what? Performing, or the higher the what? The incomes. The assumption is once your GDP is increasing, the country is doing very well. And everybody's income is expected to do what? To also increase. And once GDP is actually falling, it means people are no more doing very well because incomes would have reduced. But the real focus on the performance as a country should be on what? The gross national product, because it takes care of only the what? Only the national. In this particular case, if I give you, which I will do, all apart from consumption, I will ask you to calculate anything. So I can give you investments as maybe 500, government as 200, exports here, it also has its equations. Marginal propensity to export is also there. We also have marginal propensity to do what? To import. So export maybe 50, import maybe say 20. And then I can give you consumption function to be maybe A plus dy, and then, or I'll just give you autonomous consumption. Autonomous consumption. Sometimes you can write consumption as this one plus by. Are we together? Anything in the consumption function where income is not attached to it is called what? Please note, it's called autonomous consumption. So if I write consumption function like this is the autonomous consumption, the one that we were using, the A part. And this is the induced what? Component. I will be using this one. I will use this one. So this is just the same thing, okay? So example, I will give you the autonomous consumption, maybe say 700. And then I will tell you the marginal propensity to consume is 0.37. Is 0.37. Is 0.37. Is 0.37. So here I can ask you to specify the what? The consumption function. And by specifying the consumption function, it's just this one, which is C is equal to what? 700 plus 0.3 what? 7y. Don't do any long talk. It's just this one, which is the consumption. Are we together? Because you may not have much time to be saying where y is income. No, just write it as it is. So you have this as autonomous consumption. So I can ask you, maybe from this one, you can compute what? Income. You can compute income. Please note that. Are we together? Okay. I may not give you y, but you will find it. Remember I said the GDP will also be equal to what? Y will also be equal to y. Are we together? Will also be equal to y, which means that the entire, this one is y is equal to what? C plus I plus G plus, okay, let's say export minus what? Import. So we just do it once and for all. So with this one, we know this is consumption from the question. Is that not it? This is consumption. Are we together? This is consumption. Or if this is even GDP. But we know with this one, consumption is what? What is the consumption? Y plus investment, which is what? Where is it? Which is 500 plus 200 plus 15 minus what? 20. So here, the GDP or income, are we together? Will be equal to what? This, the whole of this is what? So let's say 0.37y. Is that not it? Plus 1430. Okay, that's good. Are we together? So what do we do here? Excellent. We group like them. So y minus what? 0.37y is equal to 1430. So here will give us 0.63y, which is equal to 1430. Divide here by 0.63, divide here by 0.63. So our overall income or GDP will be what? 2,269.8. So this is it. Are we together? So with this one, I can also ask you to estimate the savings function or to specify the savings function first. Are we together? Okay, so to specify the savings function, remember I said the savings function is what? The overall savings. The savings is overall savings. This is the savings function. This is the savings what? This is the savings function. Where S is the small s, which is the small s, is the what? Marginal propensity to what? To save. Are we together? And that marginal propensity to save, which is the small s, is equal to 1 minus what? Minus, good, marginal propensity to consume. And what is marginal propensity to consume? 0.37. 0.37. So with this one, what are we getting? 0.63. 0.63. So this is the marginal propensity to what? To save. So the savings function then becomes, where is the distance? The savings function then becomes what? 0.63y. So this is the savings function. So out of this savings function, I can actually find the value of what? Savings. This is the savings function. This is the savings function. So I can also ask you to find the value of what? Savings, given y. Are we together? So this one, the value of savings, will be what? 0.63 times, so we have our y here, times 269.8. So what will you get? So the savings should be 1,000. Okay, so this will be the savings function. This will be the savings function. So what will be the consumption, the value of consumption? What is the value of consumption? What is the value of consumption? Who can tell me? Consumption will be what? The income minus savings. We already know income. Is that not it? Which is 22.8 minus what? Savings 1430. So here will give us what? 839 point what? This will be the value of what? Consumption. Can we verify that from the question? Can we verify that? So this is the consumption function. Is that not it? This is the value of consumption. But we also know we specified our consumption function as what? As what? 700, is that not it? Plus 0.37y, is that not it? And we know why, which means our consumption will be 700 plus 0.37, 2269.8. So consumption will be equal to this one and then this one. What will you get? 1539.8. Is that not it? That is the value of what? Consumption. Why are we not getting the same thing here? No, it should be the same. Which means someone didn't get here. Give me right there. The value should be the same. So that is how we do the calculation. No, the difference is big. But the difference is big. Okay, so it should be the same. Any question? Can we compute GDP using this ones? And we can also compute the consumption function. We can also compute the savings function, and we can find the areas. Here. Oh, we worked. Remember, we cancel. Are you now clear? Oh, okay. Yes. Sorry. It was y. Yeah. No, it's not y. It's called to. Where's the doctor? So it's this one. So here, please note here, I said our y here is equal to consumption, which is this one, this, plus investment, government expenditure, plus exports minus what? Imports. This is the consumption. So here, this 0.37y is here. And you guys said 700 plus, it should be more than this one, or 700 plus 500 plus this one. Yes, yes. So it's this one. Are we together? So y is equal to this one. So here, maybe it's still here. So here is the same thing here. But here, remember we brought what here? This one came. So it will be y minus what? We are just grouping like that. It's equal to this one. Are we together? So y minus 0.37y is what? 0.673y is equal to this one. So we divide here by 0.63. Remember, please note that. Please note. Okay, let me do it this way. Let me. Okay, what is here? What is here and what is here? Y. Okay. So what is here? What is here? Y. Okay. So if y is factored out, what will be here? 1 minus 0.37 is equal to 1430. Y. 1 minus 0.37. 0.63 is equal to 1430. So this is the same thing as 0.63y. Is that not it? Which is equal to 1430. We divide here by 0.63. Divide here by 0.63. Our y then becomes what? 269.8. Are we together now? Okay. Any question? Any question before we proceed? So these are some of the dynamics. Yes. Where is it? Here is 8. They said it's 8, 3, 9, 8. Okay, let me come. Can I clean here? Okay. Your total consumption is equal to how much you earn or your income. Is that not it? Minus savings. You have left savings. What is left is what? The consumption. Okay. And we've also specified that consumption is equal to that thing, which is 700 plus 0.37y. Is that not it? Okay, let me just cancel this one and put y. This as consumption. Please note that our consumption is 700 plus 0.37. Y is given as what? 2268.69.8. No, there's no minus. Only we are looking at only consumption. So this one plus this times this, what will you get? 839 point what? 0.8. Good. This plus this, what will you get? The induced part, 1,000. Excellent. 139 point what? That's good. 0.8. That's the total consumption. It's the same thing. Each year, like we don't write it. What we hear, we're Yeah, but we are still we are just repeating the same thing. We are still repeating the same thing. Okay, good. So now please note, what is this part called? What is this part called? Excellent. It's where's give 5 marks. Induced. See, your colleagues are not happy. So this is the induced what? You are right, my +5. This is the induced what? Consumption. And what is the induced consumption? Consumption that depends on what? Income. So this is also the consumption as a result of your what? Of your income. Good. So the induced component, okay, should be equal to, where is it? Should be equal to how much you end here. So once you are getting the induced component, remember even from here, our savings will be 0.63. Why? Which is the 0.63, 2269, point what? 0.8, good. So this particular component is the savings, yes, for that one, entirely dependent on what? On income. Now, the induced component here should be equal to the what? The difference between the income. Remember, this is the consumption dependent on what? On the income. So that's why we are getting this one being equal to, where is it? The induced what? The induced component. Any question? Any question? Yes. When you get what? No, you can convert. You can convert to 1540. You can convert to 1540. Maybe if there's going to be decimals, just leave it to the nearest whole number and proceed. Any question? Yes. No, economic is constant. We are not interested in autonomous consumption. The focus is on the induced component. Autonomous is always given. It's the induced that you have to go around to get. Any question? Okay. Let's proceed. We are going to do the last side. Is it time? I thought we were closing at 4:30. What time did we start? 2:20. So if you start 2:20, when should you finish? And what is the time now? It's not even up to 4 o'clock. It's not even up to 4 o'clock. Oh, I didn't catch you people eating. Okay, now let's conclude with the last side. This is the assignment that we are coming to do. This is the assignment part. I wish that we can project it. Can we project? It would have been good to project. Can we project? It will help the class. So let me send it. I think I didn't send it. Let me just send it to you. So we are going to project and then discuss. This is very important. The focus is on I didn't tell a class na war. How na ku call on tell a class a call. Maka yung bar so. And yam yard 920 nyanya. Maka yung magba ku yas was na ukliyan. So on yelad na yo kama. Kung call mo untang man. Sorry to go. Now the focus is on the Because as a firm, whatever that is happening at the macro side will definitely affect you. Whatever decision the government is taking will definitely affect your business. So it is important as a firm for you to always have an interest in what the government is actually presenting. And what the government is presenting is called the budget statements. It's a key. I hope we are following. We are just starting that lecture like that. It's a key, policy instrument or policy tool of the government. Yes. No, I've not sent. That's what I'm now sending, and I will send to a course rep. I'm just doing that now. Okay. We'll have your email again. Huh? Jean R.A.S. No. Okay, I'm using different. Jean R.A.S. Jean R.A.S. Okay. Okay, Muda, I've sent it. Okay. No, email. Okay. So the current last one is on the. We are going to be very brief on it. We are looking at the last one, judging the one. Yes, so that one, credibility or budget credibility. Just say budget. Budget credibility. I've sent it to the course rep, so he will forward to all of you. 2 documents. One is the PowerPoint slide. One is the I'm also sending you the assignment. Maybe I can send that one on the WhatsApp. I've sent, yes. Yes, no, I'm just sending it to only Muda so that he will project it. So just PowerPoint. Okay, so this one, we are basically looking at, budget analysis. So we are looking at the budget, and the budget, those saying you want theory, this is the theory part. So please note, this is the theory part. So if you don't pay attention, I know a lot of people will do the theory. Okay. So the budget is nothing, it's just looking at what? Government revenue and then government what? Expenditure. I know we already know of what government budget is. And with similar to an individual, government budget, we are looking at how much the government is doing what is earning or is bringing in or is able to do what to mobilize, and how much government is what is spending. So this is the revenue expenditure. If how much government is earning, which is the revenue minus what expenditure, R minus what E, is the overall what balance. So the difference between the government revenue and government expenditure is called the overall what balance. It's called the overall balance. Now, if it's called the overall balance, which I will call OB, to the overall balance. In this case, if revenue
Hello, please, can I interrupt the class?
greater than what expenditure, if revenue
Can
is
I
greater than
interrupt?
expenditure, our overall balance will be what? Will it be negative or positive? Our overall balance will be what? Will be positive. In other
Can I
words,
interrupt
we
the
say
class,
the
please?
government is running what is called budget what? Surplus. Yes. Yes, please proceed.
Oga Muda. Yes, please. The recording. Sometimes Doctor will be explaining something, and the recording will be the slides. So we want to be seeing the blackboard when we are able to download it. So please, if you can make the blackboard bold instead of the one that slides.
So right now, if you want to see the blackboard, you'll have to stop showing the slide.
The blackboard is important for us. Those for the slides, we can get it in the distance. Usually we are people are not complaining, but it's disturbing us. Those who are
okay, no problem.
Okay.
So I hope you can see the board. Okay. So if government's revenue is more than or is exceeding the expenditure, we say the overall balance is what? It's positive. Or we say government is running a what? A budget surplus. I don't know where this has ever happened in Ghana. We say this. We say government is running a what? A surplus. But in a situation where government revenue is what? It's less than the expenditure, which means our overall balance will be what? Will be negative, which means our overall balance will be negative. In that case, we say government is running a what? A budget deficit. We say the government is running a budget deficit. By being a budget deficit, how much you are spending significantly outweighs how much you are earning. So there is what? A shortage. So with that particular shortage, how is that particular shortage going to be financed? How is that particular shortage? In other words, how is that particular deficit going to be what? To be financed. So now when you go to the next slide, Muda, it tells you that for a typical, where is the data? The next slide. For a typical budget presentation, in other words, once you have the budget, we have two components. One is the component that is called the above the line items. Above the line what? Items. Above the line above the line items. And we also have a component that is called the what? The below the line. So a typical budget is divided into two subsections. One is above the line and one is below the line. For the above the line items, we are basically talking about the government what? Revenue. We are also talking about government what? Expenditure. In other words, the above the line items, it specifies the items that make up the overall what? Balance. Whether the overall balance will be in what? Deficit, or whether the overall balance will be in what? In surplus. In other words, once you have a budget that's to be read or to be presented. Now we have here maybe 2022, 2023. With this one, first the government will need to talk about what? the revenue the government is coming to make. Is that not it? And under that revenue, I'm going to get this amount from taxes. Last year, I got this one. Then or this year, so last year and next year, I'm projecting that I should be able to get what? This one. Are we together? From what? From taxes. I should also be able to get maybe other revenue, maybe grants. Grants. This. And my total revenue will be this one. Are we together? Out of this revenue, this is how I'm going to spend. This is how I'm going to spend. This is how I'm going to spend. So this one will be expenditure. So the expenditure, my consumption expenditure is going to be this. Wages and salaries. Remember, government pays wages and salaries. It's part of government expenditure. Wages or government compensation will be this one. Now, the above the line items is just talking about what? Revenue side and then what? The expenditure side. Because it is these two sides that make up the overall what? Balance. So with this one, my total revenue is this one, okay? And my total expenditure, remember there are other expenditure, we will later project them, will be what? Will be this one. So my overall balance will now be what? Revenue minus what? Expenditure, which means this one minus what? This one is what you will get here. This one minus this one is what you will get here. Let's assume it is going to give you what? A negative. So you have a line below it, and then you have next set of what? Items. Are we together? So this is that particular line we are talking about. So above the line items, talk about items that dictate only what? Revenue side and expenditure side. Though they dictate whether the government will be running a budget surplus or a budget what? Deficit. Now, if the government is running a budget deficit, then the below the line items will now show how the government is going to finance those particular what? Deficit. Am I going to borrow money? If yes, from where? Am I going to sell some of our properties? If yes, which particular properties that am I going to do what? To sell. So the below the line items talks about how government is going to finance the what? The deficits from the above the line items. Are we together? From the above the line items. Any question up to this stage? So you should know if a budget is being presented, you should know we have two categories. We have the above the line items and then the below the what? Below the line items. Above the line items talks about the revenue side and then the expenditure side. And below the line talks about how the government is going to finance the above the line activities, whether deficits, if it is going to incur deficits, or if it's going to incur surplus, how much or what will the surplus be used for? The government will have to specify that in the below the line what? Below the line items. Are we together? Yes. Yes, there are grants. There are grants here. There are grants, and there are other revenues. We will be projecting them. There are grants and there are other revenues. We call something those grants the development order. We have official development assistance. Those ones are idiosyncratic. You can't predict them. So they are normal estimates until it comes. I don't know whether it's a prudence concept or whatever. Money is in, when, what, and what. I can't remember those things. But you budget for them, but you don't pay much attention on them because they are, idiosyncratic. So in this particular case, assuming government is running a deficit, then the below the line items will show us how the government is going to do what? To finance it. Let's assume, one, government is running a deficit and government is going to finance it. Government will have to tell us where it is going to get money to finance the deficit. One, a key source of revenue is what? Is the borrowing. Is the borrowing. So government will have to specify where and how much it is going to borrow to finance this particular deficit. So let's assume this is the below, this is the above the line, below the line. So continuation. So continuation, we have what? We have borrowing. So borrowing, it has to be indicated. Now, government can borrow money domestically. So government can have what is called domestic what? Borrowing. It can also go to foreign what? Markets to do what? To borrow. So we have domestic borrowing and we also have what? Foreign borrowing. With the domestic borrowing, government can go to banks to do what? To borrow money to finance this particular deficit. It can also issue bonds to do what? To finance this particular deficit. So the bonds that are being issued domestically are the domestic what? Bonds. Another one, we can issue the treasury bills to mobilize resources to be able to finance this particular one. Or it can tell Bank of Ghana to do what? To print money, to print cash for them to do what? To support them. That's what they will say they were printing to take care of the fiscal deficit. They will say we want the bank to print money to support the budget. So they are saying they should print money and give them to spend. Okay, and the money the Bank of Ghana is printing for them to spend is called the what? The seigniorage. It's pronounced as sin. It is pronounced as seigniorage. So we have it here, seigniorage. It is the profit on money. So if government is spending, please note, is government is spending 60 cedis to print the 100 notes. The 40 cedis is what? Seigniorage. They pump it to Nana to spend. Are you getting it? So it's the profit that you are making on the seigniorage. It's a source of income to the government, okay? And the seigniorage is amounts that is being printed. And the profit that you are making on that printing of that amount is called a seigniorage. You don't account for it. So if you spend an amount of money to produce a value of a money less than the production cost, the difference is the seigniorage. So if I spend 15 cedis as the unit production cost to produce that 20 CD note, I'm using 15 cedis to produce, and the value of the note itself is what? It's 20 cedis. But I've spent how much to produce it? The difference is what? 5 cedis. It is seigniorage. So so it goes to the government. So that's why I said it's in that the government, they just print the money and give to the government. It is the seigniorage that they give to the government. Yes. And those ones are here. Someone is asking that what components are kept below the line and what components are kept above the what? Above the line. Remember I said these ones are what? Above the line. From the revenue side, we can talk about taxes, we can talk about profits, we can talk about royalties. Remember, like Ashanti Gold, they give royalties. Ghana Investment Bank, Commercial Bank, they all pay to the government. Ghana government is also a shareholder in some entities. They pay dividends. So they all come under government what? They all come under revenues. It's an above the line item. Expenditure, one, our wages and salaries. Gross fixed capital formation, which is government investments, okay? It is also an above the line what? Item. All state contributions, we will be looking at them, is also an above the line item. For government, we have to pay for Senate contributions. Interest payments is also a key above the line what? Items, because government will always have to pay the interest on previous what? Debts, yes. 3 minutes to 4 to no problem, I can stop. But I know this is coming, to be very honest. Yes. Oh, yes. Let's continue. I'll wrap up. I'll wrap up. You have the slide. You can go and read. I'll wrap up. Okay. Let's proceed. Let's proceed. Let's proceed. So we are now looking at the below the line items. So the below the line items show how much the government how the government is going to do what to finance the overall balance or to finance the deficit. And I said that one is what borrowing. Government can borrow domestically or government can borrow from foreign. Yes, so government can go to the domestic market to borrow from banks. Okay, so here if government is borrowing, you know, it crowds out some investment. Why? Because we see government to be a safe haven. Whether you like or not, government will pay. Okay. Now, for a foreign borrowing, we are also talking about what government going to other countries to do what? To borrow money to finance the what? The deficit. So if it's able to issue bonds domestically, it can also issue foreign bonds. Those ones we call the Euro what? The Euro bonds. So they go on road shows to sell our bonds to international, you know, investors or private creditors. Okay, to mobilize money to come and do what? Support the budget. So by supporting the budget, to come and finance the what? The deficits. Are we making some progress? Government can also, and please, I think in the assignment I mentioned it. Domestically, we have government bonds, and government can also go to banks to print money. Okay, central bank to do what? To print money. Like I said, the seigniorage, the profit on money. So if they are printing 22 billion, how much profit are they going to make on that 2 billion? Are you getting it? Then they pump it to, yes. Well, it depends on how much they bargain. When I go to Switzerland, that's where we normally print. Oh no, I don't know whether it's a fix or you are able to, if you are able to buy. But what I know is you go to Switzerland, you can. That's where we normally print. I don't know how much they do what. I don't know how much they print 20 cedi. I don't know how much they print. Bank of Ghana, will they disclose? I don't know. They can be a fixed amount, yes. They can produce more than that. But I don't know how much it is. Let's make progress. Now, please note, government can issue bonds, and they can also go to what is the name? Central Bank or Bank of Ghana to do what? To print money. That is one. They can also borrow from the central bank. They can also borrow from the central bank. So the central bank can finance the government what? Deficits. In 2015, I still remember, IMF told Bank of Ghana, or they told government, remember we were under IMF then, they told one of the conditions, there should be zero central bank financing. You remember? There should be, because central bank has now become an institution where government can manipulate, because there is no security of tenant. So you can manipulate, there's no autonomy there. We all know what is happening. Now, IMF told this government that there should be zero central bank financing of what? Government deficit. Please note that we cannot issue bonds. We cannot also go to foreign to borrow. Why? Because that is why we have a lot of debts. But there is also a reason. We have the credit ratings institution. Yes, in terms of Ghana's credit rating, it's not good. So if you go to borrow money from international lenders, they tell you you cannot do what? You cannot pay. So there is, if you are not able to, please note, if you are not able to mobilize resources, we say the country is physical constraint. Physical constraint. Physical constraint, which means the country cannot mobilize enough what? Revenue. Domestically, the government cannot mobilize enough domestic revenue from bonds issuers or from borrowing from the banks. Are we together? And when you go to international markets, Euro bonds, you cannot go to international capital markets because your credit rating is very low. Are we together? It's almost junk or what? It's very low. So no one is willing to do what? To learn. So one, domestically, we are constrained. Internationally, we are also what? Constrained. Now, that is from borrowing. Fine, we won't borrow. What about raising taxes? Government can also raise taxes to do what? To finance this one. One is the introduction of e-levy. What happened? Is government able to get the targets? No. So it's adding more to our fiscal constraints. Is government able to increase our income tax? No. Government, yes, I'm talking of income tax. No, government is only able to increase the income tax for which people? Not only salary workers entirely, but the high income earners. You remember they increased their salary from 30% to 35%. Those high income earners, when you look at the income schedule, we have the group. So the government increased salary taxes for them because they may probably government feels they will not be able to do it, to complain. But if they impose more, even 2% tax on all of us, we'll be holding placards everywhere. But for them, government can easily raise taxes through incrementing it. But the question is, how many people are under that particular income bracket? Very few. So government itself will not be able to get that much money from even taxes. Now, even from ports and the rest, we have leakages in the system. I'm just, what is the name? Answering your assignments because I asked you, given the current country's fiscal situation, revenue mobilization into brackets, domestic and international, or for is there in your assignment. So I'm just giving you tips. Even within the country, borrowing domestically is a constraint. Foreign borrowing, forget of it. Taxes is a challenge. Even the e-levy that the government wanted to be originally pegged at 1.5%, it's now 1%. And even with that one, people are not paying more. Even those that are paying, people are saying they are overburdened, the tax or tax payers. Are we together? So it's also a challenge. Now, government is seeing a leeway with people, the central bank, to go and print, and you are complaining. Why? Are we together? Because government can only be able to raise that particular without much accountability by placing a phone call to who? The central bank governor, Addison, to support the budget. Are you getting it? Now, with that one, and knowing the political situation, it is also going to be some challenge. Now, IMF in 2015 said government should not finance, central bank should not finance the government deficit. They were very emphatic. First, it was 5%. Yes, you can finance up to 5%. But by 2015, do not finance central bank what? Central bank what? Deficit. Because as you continue to finance, they become excessively irresponsible in what? In spending. Are you together? Because for this amount, they can write it off without anything. Yes. And now there are limits to how much central bank can finance the central bank, finance the government. The current government is saying they have increased the limits, but you and I, we don't know how much they have done it. Are we together? So these are some of the things that you should be explaining. Now let's make progress. The other side is, move the next slide. Now, knowing what is happening, and we have been presented the budget, how sure are we that government is not manipulating the budget to make it look good to either domestic or public investors? Because whether you will invest in the country will depend on the future of the country. And the future of the country is specifically designed in our what? In our budget. Are we together? Now, you should be able to actually know whether the budget that is being read, whether the budget that is being presented is actually credible or not. Because me as a politician, maybe the finance minister, I will always make sure I paint a very good picture of the country. But as an analyst, how credible is the budget to you? You should be able to actually know. I will not come to the floor of parliament and say my budget is not what? Credible. I will present a very good picture and run away. and Gideon Buako and the rest will be doing the talking on the radio. Are we together? Yes. So you as an individual should be able to do what? To know whether the budget is credible or not. Now, how do we assess the credibility of a budget? Now, we assess the credibility of the budget first, move the next slide, by just looking at these two things, like what I've mentioned. One is the expenditure side, and then the what? The revenue side. You can analyze the budget by critically focusing on, because you presented with the budget, which is what? The above the line items, and then the what? The below the line items. So first, you should be focusing on the what? The above the line item, because the below the line items will tell you how much the government is going to finance it. But let's start from the top and see. How credible is the budget from the revenue side? How credible is the budget from the revenue side? So first, to analyze the credibility of the budget, you look at the revenue side. You look at the revenue side. So you look at the revenue side. And the budget is always being presented as a forecast of what? The next year. So you compare the budget for the current year or the previous year to the future year. So for instance, we are in 2023. I know in November, they will present the budget for 2024. So you need to know where we are coming from. So in this case, we need to know how much, what was the budget in 2022 or 2023, and then 2021. Remember, 2024 is always a what? A forecast or a projection. So because we are not in 2024 yet, but we should be able to plan for 2024. So you need to compare the scenario, what actually transpired truly in 2022, 2023, and then compare to how much the government is actually projecting or forecasting to be able to show whether the government is actually presenting a credible budget or is presenting a budget that is not what? Credible. Now, let's look at the revenue side. From the revenue side, you focus on two things. Like I mentioned, you focus on one, what is called the tax what? Buoyancy. What is called the tax buoyancy? The tax buoyancy is just like an elasticity. It is talking about what? How much, remember we are looking at what? The revenue side. And I said tax is a major component of government what? Revenue, okay? It's a major component of government revenue. It doesn't come with a liability. You don't have to pay on that. So with the tax buoyancy, we are talking about what? How much your tax revenue, let me just write it this way. How much your tax revenue is going to change, okay? As a result of changes in what? And your country's what? And your country's nominal GDP, or just say your country's what? GDP. In other words, your focus is on the percentage what? Change in your overall tax revenue, all over the percentage change in your what? In your GDP. This will give you the what? The tax buoyancy. It is basically talking about how much your tax revenue will change as a result of changes in what? In your GDP. As the income, as the country is growing, then the tax will also what? Will also increase. Automatically, if you are producing more as a country, increasing the GDP, then the tax is also expected to do what? To what? To increase. So you can, yes, mobilize domestic resources through taxes by not directly increasing taxes, but by increasing what? GDP. That is why Dr. Baume said they were moving from production, they were moving from taxation to what? To production. Because once you produce more, it's expected to increase domestic revenue automatically through what? Taxes. Because previous governments, according to them, they were increasing taxes. So they were rather focusing on much on what? Tax. But you can, of course, increase production from the GDP side, which will also increase the what? The what? Because the overall tax that you are going to get is the tax rate times the overall what? GDP. So if you are able to increase GDP, which is the Y, overall tax revenue will what? Increasing. So you are going to increase production to increase revenue. You can also increase the what? The tax rate, which is the what? R, to increase what? GDP. So the government was saying that they are going to move away from increasing R, which is the tax rate, as a way of increasing revenue, to increasing what? Increasing production to increase what? To increase tax revenue. Are we together? Because in either case, tax revenue is going to what? Increase. So by increasing, revenue from the GDP side means you are increasing, you are moving from taxation to what? To production. You can also move from production to taxation. The net effect will lead to increase in what? In the tax revenue. Okay. So now the tax buoyancy is talking about what? How much your overall GDP will what? How much your overall revenue from tax will increase as a result of changes in what? In your what? In your GDP, without touching the what? Tax rate. Excellent. Without touching the tax rate. Are we together? Without touching the tax rate or the tax base. So that is the tax buoyancy. So for yes, so that's the tax buoyancy. So for instance, if you compute 2022 tax, 2022, our tax buoyancy was 0.6. 2023, our tax buoyancy was 0.7. It's similar, which means that we are able to increase total revenue by increasing GDP. And the elasticity or the tax buoyancy is this one. In other words, my overall revenue will increase, okay, by this one as a result of changes in my what? In my GDP. Are we together? This and this are very similar. So there is some kind of credibility in the movement. But let's say in 2024, government is projecting a tax buoyancy of say 2.3. 2.3. This is significantly different from the norm. Are we together? This is significantly different from the norm. Because when you look at the previous history, 0.7, but government is saying, I'm going to increase revenue. So that is this one. So tax buoyancy after calculation is 2.3, which is significantly higher than this one. Now, there are some key questions you should ask government. Because remember, this is tax buoyancy. How sure are you that you'll be able to actually mobilize this one? You are saying this is it. Is it going to be possible? We will be looking at those critical questions. But the first is the tax what? Buoyancy. And the tax buoyancy is just the percentage change in what? The tax revenue. This is tax revenue. All of a percentage change in what? In the GDP. Are we together? All of us. So you just divide. You raise questions. Please note, you raise questions if the current tax buoyancy is significantly different from the previous tax buoyancies. It should raise eyebrows. The second thing you should also focus is the tax what? Elasticity. Is the tax elasticity. For that one, we are looking at what? We are looking at, it's almost the same as this one. So if the tax elasticity is also significantly different from this one, it means the current tax elasticity or the forecast of tax elasticity is also significantly different from the previous one. You should also ask what? Questions. How is the government going to mobilize the revenue without people actually doing what? Running away from paying taxes. Now let's move to the second one, Muda. Now, these are the key questions. Let's move to the next stage. Yeah. No, there's no range. So that's why I'm saying you need to know the historical trend. If there is that, there's no standard, but you need to know the historical trend. And then once you look at the historical trend, there is a significant change, it should raise an issue. It should raise an issue. So for instance, this is 0.6, 0.7. Then you have 2 point. No, there should be some explanation to be done. So now the question is, so I'm just asking, so assuming your tax buoyancy increase from 0 point, this one is just what I've asked. If it's increasing from 0 point, 3 to 1.9, this is very significant. Are you getting it? So what is the key? It means that you are going to increase or you are going to mobilize a lot of tax revenue. Are you getting it? So now the question is, what additional taxes are you going to impose as a government? Because from the tax buoyancy, there is significant increment. So we want to know what additional taxes are you going to, impose? Or you are not imposing taxes, you are rather going to do what? To increase the existing taxes. So the government should be able to answer that. What is the government, what are you going to do to be able to bring in more revenue through taxes? Knowing the current state of Ghana, what magic is the government going to do? If you increase tax rates, people will what? People will evade. There is what we call the tax morale. There is what we call the tax morale. Tax morale. That is the ability to dodge or to evade tax if you find the opportunity. Just fear God and tell. If you find the opportunity not to pay tax, who will you pay? You won't pay. So there is tax morale. By telling me I'm going to increase taxes, or I'm going to increase tax rates, or I'm going to increase or introduce additional taxes, will that particular move, let people evade tax? Will that introduction of new taxes let people evade tax? Will that particular new taxes, affect people's tax morale? These are some of the key things the government should be willing to answer. Yes.
It gave rise to merchant acquisition from the telco, the mobile money. So because of transfers, so now if the transfer is vacant, there is no charge.
Unless you cut my hand, I don't know what will make me pay e-levy. Personally, I don't know what will make me pay e-levy. I will sit here, allow cash out, and you withdraw from wherever. I will send, go to a merchant, I will allow cash out, and you do what? I won't pay e-levy. Are you getting it? That is not good. But the additional thing is, those are the things that you should be asking the government. What measures are you going to put in place to elicit acceptance of additional taxes, to elicit acceptance of what? The tax increment. If we are not controlled, we will defeat. Have you ever asked that invoice when you went to the store to buy something? You didn't. Are you getting it? But you should be paying taxes. But all of us, naturally, we are less inclined to paying what? We are less inclined to paying tax. So what is the government doing to mobilize that particular, our revenue? Yes. Without increasing the tax rate. Yes, we. Yes, so that's what I'm saying. There are critical questions you should be asking. So if there is an unusual increment in what? In the tax buoyancy, the key question is, one, it means you are going to get more tax revenue. One, are you going to introduce more taxes? What will be the political economy if you are introducing those additional taxes? Two, are you going to increase taxes? If you are going to increase taxes, what will be the behavior? What will be the effect on what? On tax morale? Will it affect or will it elicit tax what? Evasion? Are you getting? Will it elicit tax evasion? Those are the things that you should be able to ask to know whether it is actually going to happen or not. And recently, like I mentioned, there is statutory increment in tax rates. So if government is increasing there's an increment in the tax buoyancy based on your own analysis. Then in the case of Ghana, maybe the government can tell you, fine, we are increasing the tax, the income on the high income tax earners, or we are going to increase the tax, which was done. Is that not the case? Is that not the case? Yes, so these are some of the things that you should be talking about. Can we proceed? Now, the next thing is also to look at the expenditure side. Let's make progress. So now, from the expenditure side, we have two things. On the expenditure side, we have two things. Remember, there are two sets. One is the non-discretionary expenditure. Remember, we are still looking at the above the line items, and we stated the expenditure. We said wages and salaries, interest payments, and the rest. So these are the expenditures. The expenditures are divided into two. We have one, the non-discretionary expenditures. Those ones, government cannot do what? Run away from paying them, the non-discretionary. They are usually backed by what? Is it I or where is it? It's I. Non-discretionary. Non-discretionary expenditure. They are usually backed by what? By law or contract. With this, by at the end of each month or each year, you will need to do what? To make that particular payment. A key example is the government what? Interest payments. So these are non-discretionary expenditure the government will need to, because you have gone to take someone's money and you know each year this is the amount that I need to pay. So you need to interrogate the non-discretionary expenditure and then see whether there is some deviation in the non-discretionary expenditure. Like I mentioned, government will also have to pay for what? For social security, people's pensions. If government is decreasing, for instance, the social security under the expenditure side, there is a decrease in social security. Maybe in 2022, government was spending 20 billion on social security. Are we together? 2023, people will retire or there will still be some contribution, maybe say 25 billion. And the next one, government is saying, okay, fine, I'm going to adopt a less expansionary fiscal stance. What does that mean? When you say less expansionary, it means government is not going to spend more. When the government is saying we are adopting a less expansionary fiscal stance, it means that Gini component in GDP, are we together? Government is going to reduce it. It means government is beginning to cut its coat according to what? Its size. It means less expansionary fiscal what? Stance. I'm going to reduce consumption or expenditure. So in this case, maybe let's say maybe 12. This is social security. This should raise questions because this is what? A non-discretionary expenditure. Are we together? This is where you can't just say I'm reducing social security. By just saying I'm reducing it, are you going to change the law to say, okay, fine, I'm going to reduce people's social security payments, or I'm not going to pay, or I'm going to increase the years of retirement? Are we together? So these are some of the things that we should be talking about here. Okay, the next is also interest income. If you are going to reduce the interest payments, then you should be asking, are you not going to pay your creditors? Or you are going to go in for them to reduce the interest rate, or you are going to do debt exchange program. These are some of the key things you should also be analyzing. The second aspect is the discretionary what? Expenditure. The second aspect is the discretionary expenditure. For those ones, they are not backed by law, but they have an effect on the economy. For instance, government's consumption of goods and services, or government's investments, maybe gross fixed capital formation, infrastructure. Let's say infrastructure. If there is a decrease in infrastructure if government is projecting a decrease in infrastructure in 2024 compared to the previous years, you should also ask questions. Is the government going to, forfeit the effects on the overall total output or potential output of the economy? Why are you reducing what? Overall infrastructure. Why are you reducing wages and what? Salaries. Are you going to, like for instance, your wage bill? If government's workers' compensation is lower here, maybe say workers' compensation here was maybe say 67 billion, here 72 billion, and here government is saying maybe 64 billion. There is a decrease in what? In compensation. There is a decrease in what? Compensation. This is the wage bill. So how credible is this? Is government going to sack workers? Are you getting it? are you going to sack workers? Because here you have a marginal increase in what? In the wage bill. Maybe you have recruited some few people. But here there is a decrease in what? The wage bill. Are you going to sack workers? Are you going to reduce our mega salaries? Are you getting it? So these are some of the things that you should be asking. And practically, what is happening? Can the government just get up and reduce our salaries in 2024? No. Can the government also just get up and say, I'm sacking 5% of local government staff, even though people say they are not working? Is the government going to do that? No. Are you getting it? So these are some of the things that you should be asking. Yes, so now let's look at it. People are retiring. That's good. People are retiring and people are also entering. What is the knock-on effect? Are you getting it? What is the knock-on? I don't know the figures. I don't know how much are retiring. I don't know how much are being brought on board. So those are the analysis that you should be doing in your work. And those are the questions you should also be asking. Muda, let's go to the next slide. So I've just done this one. This one we've explained it. You can go to the final, I think the final slide also. Let me see. This one is the final slide. So this is the final slide. Any question? Yes. We are going to ask questions and then also explain and give some possibilities. And those possibilities are something that I've just been mentioning. And we are saying you should focus on which country? Ghana. So Muda, you can just project the assignment so I'll explain some futures so that you'll see. I've sent it to you. So those are the things that you should be asking. So this is the last part, and I'm just bringing this one straight. This one is just straightforward. Muda, what is the name? You can increase it. I hope those online are still following. You know, this one is still straightforward. Is that not it? So what thing is here that you are not familiar with? The tax incidence is basically how much government is imposing how much on the bag of cement, 36. So when you find a new equivalent price, it is expected to be more than the equivalent price here. Are you getting it? Because of the what? Of the tax. So when you find a new equivalent price and then compare to the old equivalent price, it means that the difference will be what the consumer is going to pay. And now we are also talking about what? How much is left for the producer to also what? Pay. So the tax incidence here is just talking about how much consumer is paying, how much is what? Is the producer. Remember we solved this, and in one of the questions, the producer was paying 1 cedi and the other one 12 cedis. So it's just the same thing. So you look at this 36, find the equivalent price here, find a new equivalent price, and then know the change. Are we together? So the tax incidence is who is paying the tax? How much is the producer paying? How much is the consumer paying? The producer can also pass everything to the customer or the consumer. So you should be able to tell. Find the corresponding value of government tax revenue. You are just going to multiply the 36, which is the what? The tax rate, by the number of bags in equilibrium. So the new equivalent quantity that you are going to find here, you just multiply it by what? By what? The tax rate. So the tax rate, then the government tax revenue will be equal to what? The 36 cedis, is that not it? Times the new equilibrium what? Quantity. So if the new equivalent quantity is what? 10, example. So which means the government tax will be 36 times what? 10, which will be 300 and what? 60 cedis. Another one. And then the F part is, we know that one. So just two curves. You hold here demand constant and then shift the supply curve. Remember we did that one. Or you want me to do it again? No, we did it. So the next, so let's go to the proper one. Let's go, because we've done this one. Let's go. Oh no, here, just proceed. So this one, So this is the question that we are going to meet, and this is something that you should also try your hands on in the assignment. We are saying that government, Ghana has been under some pressure from its creditors to adopt a less expansionary fiscal stance. What does that mean? Government should spend less. And once you spend less, it means your fiscal deficit will also be what? So that's what they are telling government to do. So the finance minister has prepared a budget and is going to present it to with people, parliament. Now they have hired you to analyze this budget to see whether the budget is actually credible or what or not. So this is the budget. Muda, go up small. And go down here. No, go up. Go up. Go down. No, go. I want to see only the table. Here, good. So what are you seeing here? These ones are above the line items. These are the above the line items. These are above the line items. I haven't brought in below the line items because I haven't shown where government is going to finance. Because I haven't brought in, I'm borrowing, government can also finance through portfolio investments and the rest. I haven't brought it. So all these things that you are seeing are above the line items. And I've brought this memorandum items just to provide further explanation. Because to be able to calculate the tax buoyancy, you will need the GDP. Are we together? Okay, now above the line items, we have what? The years 2021 to 2023 and then 2024 projection. Is that not it? Or forecast? Now, we have the revenues, taxes, social contributions here. I've just lumped them. Royalties, dividends, and the rest. I've put them under social contribution. The other revenues, we are talking of what? Grants. We are talking of privatization. Government can privatize, or sell some things to make revenue. They are all here. The expenditure side, we have the expenses. This one is government consumption. CGIN, that's the government consumption. And then when you come here, net acquisition of non-financial items, that is the government what? Investment. That is government investment. So expenses, we have compensation of employees. This one is our what? Government wage bill. How much government is paying us this year? Use of goods and services, that's consumption. We also have interest payments. Government should pay what? Interest, the bonds and the rest without debt exchange. We have subsidies. We also have what? Social benefits. What are these ones? Senate and the rest. And we have others. Okay. Now the net acquisition of non-financial is also government consumption, but it's investment. We call it a gross fixed capital formation, like buildings, schools, hospitals, and the rest is part of here. What is here? Overall balance. And what did we say overall balance is? Revenue minus what? Expenditure. Our total revenue as a percentage of GDP 2022 was 30.5. Is that not it? And our total expenditure in 2022 was 44.6. So which one is more than the other? So we expect to have negative overall what? Balance. And this negative overall balance is also called fiscal deficit. So instead of writing overall balance, I could have also put fiscal what? Deficits. Are we together? Because here it's negative. So subtract, put 38.5 minus 44.6 is what? 6.1. Are you getting it? The others should also give you the rest. So this is government expenditure, and this is how much government is going to make. And in all, government is saying, I'm going to run budget what? Deficit, because the overall balances are what? Are negative. But we'll be happy because the overall balance is going to reduce. In which year? 2024. But that is what the government is saying. So we will be what? we'll be happy because government is not going to, yes, government is going to run fiscal deficit, but it's not going to be what? More compared to previous years, compared to previous, so you will be happy. But is this budget actually credible? So these are the things that should ask. So now the question is, let's go to the question. Now, that based on, you have gone too far. Maybe just come up to here. Go down, go down, go down. Okay, this is fine. So based on the tax buoyancy implicit in the projection for 2024, what questions would you ask to assess the plausibility of the what? Of the projections? Which means that the tax buoyancy is looking at how much the government is going to make from the tax revenue. Are you getting it? For the one that is in 2024, does it raise any question on the credibility of the budget? So let's go up and look at the tax revenue. Let's go up here. So this is it. So this alone is the what? Is the tax revenue. So the tax buoyancy calculation, you are not looking at the overall revenue. You are only looking at the what? The tax revenue, 32.5, 31.9, and then what? 34.8. And you cannot compare, you cannot calculate tax buoyancy for just the current year to make a judgment. You need to calculate it for the previous year and know where we are coming from as a country. So you need to calculate the tax buoyancy for 2020 what? 2023, and then 2020 what? 4. But you know the tax buoyancy is the percentage change. So with this one, what is the total, the tax buoyancy 2022? It will be dashed because we don't know the previous one. Good. But we can find this one. So tax buoyancy for 2023 will be what? The tax for 2020, 31.9 minus 0.5 all over 32.5 times 100. That was good. So what will you get? What will you get? What will you get? This one is the percentage change in what? In the tax revenue. This is the percentage change in the what? In the tax revenue. This is what? Minus 0.6, okay? Just divide times 100. Sorry? Negative 5%. So remember the tax buoyancy, we said it is what? Percentage change in the what? In the tax revenue, all of a percentage change in the what? In the GDP. So let's look at the percentage change in the what? In the GDP. And the percentage change in the GDP will be what? We know the GDP. Is that not it? When you go to the memorandum items, when you go down, Muda. Go ahead. Can you see it? The second line. Can you see it? Good. So it is going to be 1923 minus what? 1821 divided by 1821 times what? 100. What will you get? What will you get? What will you get? You will get 5.6. Okay, 5.6%. So with this one, our tax buoyancy will be what? Our tax buoyancy, I'll just call it TB, will be what? Minus 1 point, where is it? 85 all over 5.6. What will you get? 0. Negative 0.33. So the tax buoyancy for 2020, where is the distance? I hope we are following. The tax buoyancy for 2023 is minus 0.33. We calculate the tax buoyancy for which year again? 2024, and then compare. And we know the tax revenue for 2024 is what? It's 34.8. 34.8 minus what? Minus 31.9. Minus 31 point what? 9 all over 31.9 times 100. What are we getting? Sorry? 9.09. That's good. And then the second one, which is the what? The GDP side, is giving us 200. Yes, good. 2006 minus 1923 all over 1923 times what? 100. So what are we getting? 4. Excellent. 32. So this is the tax buoyancy for 2023. So the tax buoyancy for 2024 will be what? Where is it? No. 9.09 all over 4.32. What are we getting? 2.10. 2.10. 2.10. How credible is this one? Finance Minister, you have to come and explain. How credible is this one? Are we getting it? So now the question is the government going to do what? What unique thing are you going to do to rake in that additional revenue? You can see there is even an increment in the tax revenue from 31.9 to 4.8. When you find a difference, it won't be much, okay? But as compared to the GDP or the tax buoyancy, it is actually very what? Significant, because we are moving from this one, which is even in the negative, to what? To 2.9. So the finance minister should be able to tell us what magic is he coming to do, given the current state of Ghana, to be able to rake that additional huge money from what? From taxes alone. Are you now? So now this is what I say. Is he going to introduce more taxes? We have elections around the corner where government is trying to even please people by reducing taxes, giving freebies and the rest. But in this case, you have increase in what? Tax buoyancy. Is the government going to increase taxes even in an election year? It's an unpopular decision, in a political suicide for the government to do. So it's not credible. Are you together? So these are some of the things, and I've given you other questions. So these are just hints how to analyze the things. So the A part has been done. Then you ask those questions and relate it to what is happening. Now the B part, Muda, is saying that from the expenditure side, what figures or what values from the, what numbers on the expenditure side of the budget for 2024 raise questions, critically explain. So let's look at the expenditure side, where we are coming from. Now, even let's pick from the compensation of employees. Now you realize that workers' wages and salaries actually increased. The government wage bill increased from 11.4 to 12.6, which is quite reasonable because the economy is growing. You should be, paying, employing more. But in next year, 2024, you are saying you want to reduce the compensation. Are you going to sack people? Election year, you sack people. Are we together? Is the government going to sack people? Are you going to reduce our wages and salaries? What exactly will you be doing to, yes, we know you are going to use less expansionary fiscal stance, but you have to be credible. So in this case, what magic is the government going to do? Employee rationale, what? So you ask the relevant questions. Now, let's look at goods and services. Let's look at goods and services. Even when you link goods and services to government investment, remember I said this is government investment. There is a reduction in what? In the two. Government is going to reduce spending on goods and services, which means government is not going to give textbooks. Government is not going to give free food for the free senior high school people and the rest. Are you getting it? Even investments, now a net acquisition of non-financial what assets, hospitals, rules, agenda 111. There is decrease in expenditure for next year. Are you going to stop agenda 111? Planting for food and jobs. Are you going to stop it? Are you going to stop building schools under trees? What are you going to do? So these are the key things from the expenditure side. Now, when you look at subsidies, that one, there is small marginal decrease. Social benefits, there is also what? Reduction, because when you see it, even though it's quite marginal, but it should also raise questions. Interest payments, government is saying there is going to be a constant interest payment on its loans. That one might be reasonable, but significantly, wages and salaries should raise questions. Your expenditure on goods and services, as well as infrastructure, should also raise what? Questions, because these are investments that are actually very necessary, and they matter for the potential output that you will be, producing as a country. Now, given the ongoing fiscal constraints of Ghana with regard to revenue mobilization, both domestically and externally, government is constrained. Domestically, it can't raise tax revenue. E-levy, we are not paying. When you import, you find a way of altering the weight bill. What is the name? The weight bill. The port you under declare. So the government is not making money. Now they have increased use digitalization. Is government going to use digitalization to increase revenue? GVLA or ECG. But we said they have used digitalization to do what? To increase revenue. So if government is doing that, then you should be asking the possibility of or the workability of those particular ways of plugging in some of the loopholes to be able to increase revenue. These are some of the things that will be. So you can ask, in terms of revenue, okay, fine, we are going to digitalize our revenue streams. GiftMix is fully working. We are going to upgrade, ECG. Now payments, we are not having direct contact with customers. We pay online, mobile money is there, e-levy is there, what and what. Those are the justifications government may give to bring in more revenue. So you should be interrogating some of these things. Now, with constraints, government is not going to get more revenue because of what is happening. So with this one, combined with the expenditure side, will you rate the overall budget as credible or not? There is some discretion in your, what is the name, analysis. Yes, there is some discretion, but the final conclusion is it can be credible, but less credible, or it's not what credible, depending on how you assess it, or depending on whether you are NPP or are you getting it? Oh yes, these are real figures. Your exam, this one are not real figure, but it's from a certain country. But exams I'll give you, this one is from a certain country, I won't mention the name. It's from IMF Article 4 document. Ghana, we also have our IMF Article 4. So I'll bring real what is the name? Real values, so that you will answer whether I can put Setekwe budgets and then put Ken budget and see which one is more credible than the other. But when I do, you say, oh, I'm NPP or NDC. So I won't do, but I'll just give you real figures and you will do the analysis. This will be coming in the exam, live. Feel it. Okay. So let's Those online, I hope you are still connected. So let's make progress. Final one. Final one. Final one. Exams, you will have, I'm looking at your questions. I don't want to print it now. Exams, you will have, for now, I have 5 questions, but you are going to answer 3. So it's either I remove 1 and make it 4, or I just leave the 5. But once I leave the 5, it's going to be a work for me. So I have to draw the marking scheme for the 5th question. So I'm still looking at possible ways. So question 1 is going to be something that we have solved in class. It's on what is the name? Optimization. Optimization. We have solved it. We have solved it. So each question is 20 marks. Each question will be 20 marks. So you are going to have 2 questions compulsory. So section A will be 2 questions compulsory. I didn't do that. From yours, we have been given guidelines. At your level, you should have a case study. So you will have compulsory and then they are saying, I'm saying you have to answer 3 questions. And those 3 questions, each will carry 20 marks. And I'm saying that your compulsory questions, I want to make it 2 questions. You answer the 2, and the optional, you just pick 1. I don't know whether you get it. It wouldn't change, to be better, it wouldn't change anything. So if I just, so for instance, okay, no problem. So now we have, let me just show you. So we have section A. Section A, we have question 1, 2. Just follow me. This one is what? Compulsory. We can have section what? B. Answer only what? Only 1 question. So 1 only. So here we will have question 3, question 4, or maybe question 5. I'm still not sure whether to put question 5, but it will be like this. And you are saying I shouldn't do this one. Okay, no problem. So I can make it 1, and then here just the A, here B. So it won't change. It won't change. That's why it won't change anything. I want you to answer 2 compulsory questions. Yes. Yes, both A and B will be the same marks. 20. So it's the same. Yes. Question. Are you asking a question? Okay. So for question 1, I will give you the total cost function. I will give you the sales for good 1, good 2. Okay. And then you find the total. You will show that the profit function is this one. So even with this one, I've helped you, because the question is saying you could find the maximum profit and the value, maximum profit and the values of Q1 and then Q2 at which this is achieved. So remember we last solved a particular where we said 1,000 Q plus, that's the question I'm referring to. So with this one, remember we solved and we got profits is equal to something. So I'm just saying that the A part is show that, I'm reminding you, profit is this. So you just multiply, this is plus 800 Q. That's the total revenue. Is that not it? Minus what? The total cost function. So that will be the profit. So I've just brought this and I'm there to show this one. Are you getting it? So it's the same thing. Okay. No, it will be given. It will be given. The C part is I will ask whether the firm is operating in the short run or the long run. Remember, we asked that. If they are making profits, it means they are in the, if they are making positive profit, they are in the long run, you get 0. It's in the short run. Question 2 is something that we have also solved. It's on finding the unit of capital the firm should employ, and then the labor the firm should also what? The firm should also hire. Yes, so that one is just, and then the marginal product of what? The marginal product, the ratio of the marginal product to capital to price, yes, and then marginal product of labor to price of labor. We've done it, so it's also coming. Now, this one is also coming. I know you won't be happy. So we have someone is parking over there. Not happy. You remember this ones where you equate this one to this one, you equate this one, and then you use the matrix. But please, remember, I'm saying you can have, but you will choose which one you will use. Are you getting it? You will choose which one to use. Whether you use this one, simultaneous equation or matrix. So it's this one. So you find the price and then the what? The quantity, and also show what type of good is what? Is it? Looking at the coefficient of the prices. Remember this one is something like maybe say 40 minus 5P1 minus what? P2, something like this. I'm even writing there. I'll change the question. So this one, with this one, what type of good is it? What type of good is this? Huh? Why? Why? We are looking at the quantity demanded for good what? One, against the price. Yes, they are directly related, yes. But it doesn't answer the question. Against the price of what? Good what? 2. The coefficient is what? An increase in the price of good 2 will lead to what? Decrease in the quantity demanded for what? Good 1, for the other good. So what type of good is this one? Complementary. Yes. So that is the B part. And then briefly explain. Are you getting it? So the other part is, okay, yes, this one too is also coming. With the aid of well-labeled diagrams, explain the short and the long run profit maximization situation of firms in a perfect competitive market. Why do firms make the kind of profit they make in the long run? Are you getting it? Remember, we did profit maximization in the perfect competitive market. And I said in the short run, they make profits. And we did this one, we said this one. Are you getting it? So this is the short run. Then the long run will be what? This one. Are you getting it? This is the long run. So I'm asking you, why do the firms make the kind of profit they make in the long run? In the long run, what type of profit do perfect competitive firms make? So why do they all make normal profit in the long run? Because of what? So it's part free entry, free as they compete away the profit. So those ones I'm saying you should be talking about it. Question 4 is the question 1 of the assignments, similar one. And then the last question 5, is this one. Are we together? So you choose. So that is it. So that's what I'm saying. Please just go through what we have been doing in class, and it will help you. Any question before we close? Those online, do you have any question? Any question? Any question? So I'll give you 3 hours, but you can finish under 3 hours. Please make sure you practice. Otherwise, If you deviate, you will be very hot. It's always like that. Yes. Yes, someone is asking a question. Oh no, it's procedure. But if I ask you to show that profit is this and you get it wrong, remember in the next question, I'll have to find the value of the profit. So you get 0, 0, 0, 0. Any question? Otherwise, I wish you all the best. This show that